If you're a visionary who's watched people's eyes glaze over as you try to sell your dream of the future, you'll want to listen to today's episode. Welcome to Bad Boss Confessional. I'm Beth Fahey. Here's what I wish someone had told me when I first became a manager. You're going to mess up a lot, and that's actually the point. I've been leading teams for over 30 years, and my biggest breakthroughs came disguised as my biggest blunders. This show is about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, because that's where real leadership growth happens. I'd like you to meet one of my favorite people, Lynda Martin. Lynda is one of the most interesting women I've gotten to know in the EOS community. She's worldly and wise and super funny. She's got tons of experience as a boss and is always looking to grow both personally and professionally. I'm certain you'll enjoy listening to our conversation. Welcome, Lynda.
Thank you, Beth. That was a great introduction. I love that you appreciate my sense of humor because not everybody does.
Oh, I love your sense of humor.
I- I'm really looking forward to our time together.
Yeah, me too. Me too. So I'd love to know, because I think your story is so interesting, could you give us a snapshot of your career up to this point?
That's a little hard to do because it's been multivariate. I counted up once. I have worked for, coached, or owned or managed 350 companies. So it's hard to summarize, but I think for this podcast, the important thing is I grew up in a family of business owners, which made me vow that I would never be involved in small business. And you see how well that has worked. I became a member of a religious order and ended up right in the middle of running our for profit subsidiaries. So I was right back in family and team business because there's nothing like running businesses with religious people that you live with. After that phase, I decided I would go into corporate world, but my concept of corporate world was weird, and I ended up at an entrepreneurial business on steroids, privately held, 350 million, grew to almost a billion before it was purchased, and I called that my corporate experience until I realized it was not. It was entrepreneurial. All of this gave me the question of how does our whole life and business work together for the good of the world we're in. So that has been the koan or the riddle for me since I was pretty young.
Say more about this, because now you've really piqued my interest. I really want to hear more about this.
Well, as an EOS implementer, you can appreciate that we are dealing with full human beings when we're talking to our leadership teams, right? And it was a great revelation after the Industrial Revolution that, oh, you cannot leave people's emotional and family personas outside. There were a lot of Duran and Deming who we kind of, as Americans, kicked to the curb. They went to Japan and worked on their auto business. And then the American auto businesses went, oh, maybe we should pay attention to this. But a lot of it was if you bring your whole self into the business and you're allowed to make recommendations, you see things the bosses don't. In entrepreneurial businesses, that's why I love working with them. Their whole life is on the table. And so spiritual practice can come up, not in some sort of weird proselytizing way, but just in how do you keep yourself going? You know, we all know we need to exercise and eat right and all that. Remembering as whole human beings, how do we bring our whole self there? So that's kind of my spiritual practice and business focus.
So when you're working with clients, and you do the same thing I do, right? We're both EOS implementers. We're both working with teams and looking at all of the functions or dysfunctions that are happening with those teams. And what I often see is founder visionaries or founder owners that are their entire life is the business. And there's very little left for family, very little left for spirituality or anything like that. So how do you address that, or do you address that when you encounter it in the session room?
Well, as you know, you have to kind of meet them where they are and see what they're open to. Most of my clients are in Atlanta, Georgia. So it also depends what their belief system or overarching practices are. I one time had a client who was just struggling with sales, and I said, we'll call him Greg. Greg, what have you done in the past? And he said, I got down on my knees and I prayed to the Lord. And I said, well, Greg, have you done that? Oh, no, I haven't. Well, why don't we try that? There are other people that are, more Buddhist or spiritual or what, the spiritual practice has so many forms that it has to come up naturally or it feels weird. And I am not doing spiritual counseling to my EOS leadership teams in a formal way. It's just, how can it not come up? We talk about how people cry in our rooms and cuss in our rooms. The emotions are going to come up. When somebody's life is so wrapped up in their business that they've kind of lost themselves, I really feel like the first place they need to go is to, whatever extent they can, look deep within themselves. We do this when we start with core values and core focus. Why did you even start this thing? Can you remember that? It's almost like marriage counseling. Why did you marry this business? What attracted you? Let's get back to that. And that is often a soul level question.
Yeah. And super important too to be able to answer, because if you're just doing it for the money, that isn't going to sustain you for a long period of time.
Not during hard times.
No, that's really interesting. So, switching gears. This isn't the purpose of the podcast is obviously, we're sharing stories from our past. Maybe we didn't do things very well and we learned and try to do it better moving forward. And so I'm wondering if you have a story that you'd be willing to share from your wide and varied career prior to being an implementer.
It has been so fun to think through this and confrontive. So, again, the practical application of spiritual tools, when I left the religious order and the corporate quote unquote experience, I became a business coach and consultant. And this was in the mid 90s. And so I had this idea that I could build a practice around coaching businesses and applying spiritual tools. And around me formed this is sort of like before B Corps were B Corps. It was really what I was trying to form was a B Corp, where we're doing business, making money, helping people, and helping society. So I gathered some partners, or they kind of came to me. I was in an old family home that had been in our family on Peachtree Road here in Atlanta since the early 1800s. It's a magical place. And so the family was helping get that cleaned up. We'd inherited it from a great aunt who'd kind of let it go. And so we had a lot of work to do on that. And then these two kind of partners came who were doing spiritual direction and counseling. And then I had my partner in the business coaching business, and she talked about moving in there. So I'm imagining this community where we're teaching spiritual path and business and emotional well-being on an acre and a half in the middle of a business district where there are these old trees and even a family cemetery and a big front porch and just a perfect session room. It was my first session room. And one day, I am what you might call a bulldozer visionary. And so this thing is growing and more people are coming. And one day I sit down and I mind map out the next 20 years. And I am so excited. I am so excited that I go around to each of my partners and share it. And I am talking, I am sure, 40 miles an hour. and I'm seeing their eyes glaze over, but I am paying no attention because I am into lead, follow, or get out of my way. I was so in love with my own ideas that even though I measure high on an empathy scale, I couldn't tell. I was completely ignoring their needs and feelings. Within a few years, the whole thing fell apart. Now, some of that was my leadership. Some of that was outside forces, but I have to own that bulldozing people with your ideas is counterproductive.
Yeah. So this happens all the time, and I'm smiling and laughing in recognition because I guess I'm a bulldozer visionary too. And, just seeing people like, "Oh god, there she goes again. There, another idea." So this happens. This is a very common phenomenon. We see it all the time in session rooms. And what do you think the impetus of that is for a visionary?
Oh my gosh, if I look at myself and other visionaries that I have known, it's you're just so in love with the idea of it, and it's like your greatest strength turned up too high, you know? I could see a spiritual school. I called it spiritual practice with a business edge and business practice with a spiritual edge. I mean, what a great tagline, right? But I was just so in love with it. And so I think that engine that drives us, if we don't have skills and abilities and self knowledge, we just run over people. These were not namby-pamby people.
Mhm.
One of these people had her spiritual development degree from Princeton University and a psychology degree from I don't remember where, but you get the idea. And she had overcome amazing challenges in her life. And sometime later, when they were kind enough to decompress with me after everything fell apart, and she said, Lynda, when I looked at that mind map you had drawn, I just collapsed inside. And from that moment on, she started distancing herself because she just couldn't track with it. She couldn't follow it. She couldn't keep up with it. Our internal engine sometimes isn't really paying attention to our surroundings, hence the bulldozer analogy.
Yeah. Yeah, I know I've been in similar situations and seen myself in the moment doing it and recognizing that I'm doing it, but I can't help myself because this idea is really amazing. And just wait until you hear this. And boy, is this a moneymaker. And I look back and I can tell you for a fact. So I had a bakery, right? Buttermilk pie, that was gonna be it, and boy, you gotta or this cafe that we're gonna add, that's gonna be it. And when people's eyes are glazing over, they're thinking about all of the work that that's going to entail. Meanwhile, the visionary is kinda like, "Well, we'll figure it out, we always do, and it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Just go. Just trust me. Just trust me." But they're so fatigued because they've seen this movie before and they know how it's going to end. And it usually means that they're working 50, 60, 70 hours a week.
Yeah, and I do honor the person I was telling you about that she knew herself well enough to understand that she did not have the emotional capacity and the time capacity and the mental capacity. Not that she didn't have plenty of capacity, it was just that it wasn't going to go towards my dream.
Yeah, interesting. Your journey since then. What did you learn? What was the revelation or
I think another piece of at least my particular combination is being a perfectionist. I have an engineering father, and nothing was ever good enough. And so, being a perfectionist, not only did I have this huge mind map with all these classes and courses and things we were in, it was going to be done perfectly. So, of course, when I got all the pushback, even my husband, who was in the business too, he's a pastoral counselor, he just was like, we had screaming matches on opposite sides of the porch, you know? And finally, I think something clicked and I just went, wait a minute, if I'm hearing this from everybody, it might be me. And so these are people who love me. I may not be feeling it right now, but they do. And so then I think fear set in. And honestly, Beth, one day I lay on the middle of the floor in that old house where my great grandmothers had swept the floor. And I cried so hard that I had to go throw up. Now, that may be a little dramatic for people, but I mean, that's how invested I was. And it was kind of at that point that I went, okay. And what I learned through a lot of assessments and coaching, and I have a master's degree in human resources development. I had done assessments by the dozen. I knew who I was, but somehow it didn't register. Like you said, you watch yourself do. I'm not sure I was even aware I was doing it. I mean, that's really bad for someone who is supposed to be spiritually advanced and educated. And, I found out that yes, meditation is really important. Slowing down and asking the people you're working with, the people you're leading, your own self. And then, oh, here's the other piece when you're in that wound up gear. Oh, then you have to listen. You have to wait quietly because not everybody is working like this. To listen. My husband's from Oklahoma and they talk, I'm sorry to offend anyone in Oklahoma, but could you finish the gosh darn sentence? You know? And so he was part of the teaching, that slow down, ask, and then actually listen. And then do it again and again. And oh, yeah, instead of showing somebody a mind map with 20 branches that have sub branches, maybe use something like, oh, I wish I'd had this, a vision traction organizer to communicate.
Yeah. To get everybody on the same page.
To ask and listen. Yeah. So, yeah, a lot of assessments, a lot of coaching, a lot of books, a lot of TEDx's. I have a whole list. I tried to narrow it down because, again, I've got 100 of these, so I tried to narrow it down for these purposes. But yeah, that was what got me through getting some good coaching, business coaching, spiritual coaching, psychiatrist, health coaching. And lately, Beth, you think, okay, I learned a lot from this. By the time I joined EOS, well, I was still in the throes of this falling apart when I joined EOS 12 years ago. So my first few years were really, really rough for that reason. We still had to sell the place. I mean, there was a lot going on. But here I am 12 years later. I am now doing EOS and I'm looking at what am I going to do until I'm 100? And some of that is going to be, again, I want to more consciously do coaching and teaching around the spiritual tools as applied to business. And I am having to kind of go, whoa, okay, wait a minute. So, positive intelligence has been really, really helpful. The PQ coaching, I have a great coach. Something called human design, which I resisted greatly at first, has been of big help. My kind of marketing coach has really been helping me see that if I am going to market myself, I've got to be in alignment with my whole internal design. And again, being aligned with what your soul wants, as well as what your family needs, and as well as your desire to impact your industry, I think that's key. That's what's helped me.
And I think EOS is really good for that personal development piece, right? Because I tell my teams this all the time, and I've probably said this on the podcast before, but when I start working with a team, I'm like, look, EOS is going to get you all the results that you want. So, whatever results you're looking for, whether it's profit, work life balance, clarity and direction, you're going to get all that. But I'm really here for you personally, because the personal growth that happens via using EOS is really what I hope to see from every individual on the team. And that's what I love about it so much, because it's a gateway into much deeper mastery of alignment, and alignment not just for you and the leadership team, but alignment of you with your values. I mean, the whole reason I'm here as an implementer is I looked at my personal core values one day and thought I was really unhappy. And I am not in alignment with my core values. Not, and the bakeries are, it was closely aligned to it, but it wasn't exactly the same. And when I realized that, it was just like, so I credit EOS for honestly saving my life at a certain point when I was really in a dark place. And we see this all the time with our clients. We see what can happen. And because we've bled the blood and we've been there and we've done the work, that's the thing that I have to convey to anyone who's interested in using EOS, is that be ready, because you're going to get everything you want if you do it. And if you resist it, then, you know, you're going to stay stuck.
Yeah, it's such a clear mirror.
Mhm.
It reflects back.
Right, because we are, as you said at the beginning of this podcast, we are the same person throughout. It's a whole ecosystem, right? It is not just the business or the personal, it's the family. It's all of that is woven in together. So
And you know, Beth, that is a radical concept. I agree with you. I think it's what we are here to do, but it's a radical concept out there in the world.
I think that EOS has definitely got a handle on it, as far as they're definitely tapping into what I call modern leadership. So to me, this is the next phase of our evolution. And, it sounds very lofty, but visionaries that we are. So it's like, how do you change the world? How do you make the world a better place? Better than you found it.
Yes, and at a level that is very, one of my coaches said, sales is a spiritual experience. It's a spiritual exercise. And that kind of goes with leading people. All of it reflects back, and EOS is a wonderful tool for doing that.
Yeah. All right. So you listed PQ and Human Design. What other books were influential?
Well, I would start actually with the assessments that were influential. Like I said, I took them by the dozen, but the Gallup Strengths Finder, and then hiring a coach to help me find my own particular recipe based on my strengths. I did that about 5 years ago. And I mean, the Strengths Finder, I've been involved with Gallup since the mid 90s, or early 90s, but the Strengths Finder coaching I just did like 5 years ago, and it was amazing in terms of how I, as a coach and implementer and leader, come across. The Berkman method is a great one. The Divine Sales Inventory, and I have these written up. I can send them to you. That's one that Sandler used, and I actually got it from one of my EOS coaches to help with my sales. It's a sales inventory, but it measures you on things like empathy, and I don't know, there are 32 components on how you are as a salesperson. And then, of course, the Colby. And then just the EOS concept of visionary and integrator. Oh, I don't have to be an integrator. Was so freeing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And then, yeah, I have my stack of books here. I don't know. These are some books that I have found really influential.
All right, so I'm going to read them to the listeners. So we've got Richard Branson's Screw Business as Usual, The E Myth, Michael Gerber, The Power of Full Engagement,
By Tony Schwartz, The Seven Habits with Stephen Covey.
1501 Ways to Reward Employees. That's a great book. Letting Go. And then we've got Blessed Unrest. Wow.
And Blessed Unrest is by Paul Hawken, who started a distribution company called Airone and then a tool company for gardeners.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the story of all the people who kept coming up to him when he was giving talks and talking about how they were challenging the current models of you've got to work and ignore your family and community grassroots kind of business growth. Those were all enormously encouraging.
There's so many books. Did you ever read Conscious Capitalism?
Yes, I'm a member of the local chapter.
Yeah, same. There's a lot of new thought out there as far as basically finding the humanity in business. That's a lot of the stuff that I'm obsessed with Great Boss and everything. Is just it's really about seeing your direct reports, seeing your team as a group of humans that you love and care for, and how you work with people that you love and care for.
The whole idea that every person has a unique ability, as Dan Sullivan would say, they have talents, they have things they can offer us. I can draw that 20 branch mind map, but other people are going to have great ideas and be able to help make it a reality in ways I can't even conceive of.
I'll just share a quick story here. Before we did EOS, we were huge advocates, devotees of Zing Train and Zingerman's. I don't know if some people know who they are, but they're out of Ann Arbor.
They are famous.
Yeah. And anyway, so we went there and took their visioning course. This was before EOS. And I was, of course, as the visionary, just all hopped up on Goop, after that, because I was just like, this is amazing. This is, oh my God, I've got to get some more journals. And so an exercise that we did, we brought journals into the bakery, one for every person. And we actually had them write down their visions of their future. So they're essentially their personal 10-year target, 3-year picture, 1-year plan. And it wasn't EOS, but it was just thinking about the future, your preferred future, pick a date, what's happening. And so it was great precursor to EOS for us. And we really loved it. And when we did this exercise with everybody in the organization, so these are all kids, like fresh out of culinary school, they're fresh. And I'll be honest, I used to just think of folks as just worker bees, and they're there to help, all of the production. We were a manufacturing company. And so it was just really like, let's just get the product made, let's get these cakes out the door, and so on. And I was blown away when everybody read their vision out loud. We all took turns and we listened to, the few pages that people had written about their preferred future. And it really knocked me on my heels because I thought, oh, these people have vision too. I'm not the only one. And what it did for me was it made me think, how can I help them get there? And it completely shifted everything that I thought I was doing, which was, running a very successful bakery and getting all the awards and all that stuff. Instead, it refocused me to thinking, how can I help these people get what they want or what their preferred future is? And so I stopped thinking of myself as a bakery owner, but instead I was helping them manifest this vision. Once I changed that perspective, it changed everything. And so, anyway, I kind of get a little emotional talking about it because I think that was, for me, the impetus to ending up doing this kind of work eventually, which is very gratifying.
Yeah, it's so beautiful to think about business as a service to humanity. That's originally what business is in. We're filling a need. We're a service to humanity, not all that other stuff that I don't even want to think about. But yeah,
Same. I feel the same.
digging out of a deep disappointment, pivoting to a new way of looking at the world. We're not in command and control, and being humble about how little we really know. I think, that was what saved me. And then being willing to listen. I've talked about all the coaches, but there were also colleagues and friends who were kind enough to be honest with me and patient enough to listen to me. What a gift.
More on my conversation with Lynda Martin after a word from our sponsors. Let's be honest, hiring the right people is hard. That's why I love Titus Talent Strategies. Their whole person hiring approach helps you find and keep A players who align with your values, and they back it with an industry leading guarantee. Best part? Titus Talent Strategies is included in the entrepreneurial toolkit for companies running on EOS. Check them out at titustalent.com/EOS. Do you love running on EOS? Try Stredi, the EOS platform people love. Native integrations and extra features help you manage people, projects, process, and engagement. Connected to your favorite EOS tools and all in one place. You love EOS. It's time to love the platform you're running it on. Try Stredi free at stredi.com. That's STRETY.com. Stredi, the EOS platform people love. And now back to Lynda. Oh, this has been so fun. I've really enjoyed this conversation. But we're not done yet because I have a question for you. So I ask all of my guests, if you were to get a tattoo somewhere on your body that reminded you of the thing that you need to be mindful of moving forward. I don't know if you have any tattoos, Lynda, but if you were to get one, what would it be and where would it be located?
So I do have one, but that's a whole nother story. I think a lotus blossom is what pops into mind, having not thought about this. A lotus blossom is all about, unfolding soul. They often grow in pretty scummy ponds. So it's a reminder that we grow from that environment. And I'm thinking I would probably want it someplace where I could see it to remind me when you're in the throes of something to have it just like right there, so probably like right here.
That's awesome. Well, I've so enjoyed this conversation. I've gotten to know you a little bit better. I know you a little bit, but now I know you more.
Likewise.
I want to keep learning more about you and learning from you because you're a wise woman. And I really appreciate the time that we spent here together.
Well, thank you, Beth. Back at ya. And I love how your questions unfold things within me and my bossness.
Yeah, we're all just works in progress, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thanks to Lynda Martin for her honest story about her big idea and her team losing confidence in her leadership. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and share with friends who need to hear this. Thanks for listening to Bad Boss Confessional. We'll see you next week.